Welcome to the Beau Show. For those who may not know what and who Project Veritas is, I'll provide a brief primer so you can better understand who they are and what they do. Pulling directly from their website, James O'Keefe established Project Veritas in 2011 as a nonprofit journalism enterprise to continue his undercover reporting work. As a legally recognized and fully reporting enterprise, Project Veritas is the most effective nonprofit on the national scene, period. According to its mission statement, Project Veritas seeks to investigate and expose corruption, dishonesty, waste, fraud, and other misconduct in both the private and public sectors to achieve a more ethical and transparent society. Veritas in Latin means truth, so that's what they're after. Here are their core values. Firstly, moral courage. Courage, of course, is esteemed above many other virtues because you have to have courage to be able to confront a fear or mass corruption. One thing that is so tough is to be able to be willing to lose friends or colleagues or even your own job. But those with great fortitude do this at great risk to themselves and their careers. Another Veritas value is leadership. They seek to turn people into leaders. 3, collaboration. They see a team effort. Resilience. They know that you will falter along the way, but to aim towards perfection is a worthy goal. Mission-driven. They see their purpose as externally focused, not internal. O'Keefe and his team truly believe in their cause. He also wants to change the status quo, even if that means moving mountains. Failure is not an option. Finally, the tip of the spear. They are unafraid of conflict or litigation. And as I keep telling you more about them, you'll understand why. That is certainly true. They are undaunted by any provocation or threat. They do what they believe they have to do. Now, here are Project Veritas's ethical values. 1, truth is paramount. They do not selectively edit the footage that they show. They consider their video and audio to be irrefutable. 2, they do not break the law. With any private recordings, they ensure either one-party consent in areas where that is required, or what the expectation of privacy is if consent is required by all parties. They also adhere to the First Amendment rights of others and do not disturb the peace. Because much of Veritas's investigative journalism is undercover, they use the Zeekman test as a baseline, which says that undercover investigative reporting is necessary because there's no other way to get the story. Whereas the Society of Professional Journalists allows for undercover techniques. If undercover techniques are necessary to expose issues of vital public importance, we believe they are not only allowed, but required. That's a quote from them. Their 5th rule is that they protect the innocent when possible. They say they stay away from embarrassing private details and seek more individual wrongdoing rather than any religious or sexual dispositions. Their 6th rule is transparency. They believe their methods and tactics must be reasonable and defensible. They use the, quote, 12 jurors on our shoulder, end quote, rule, meaning they have to be able to have enough integrity to withstand scrutiny in law and ethics. Rule 7 is that they have to be able to verify and corroborate the stories and whether the assertions are newsworthy. They claim that they allow their subjects to elaborate or to respond to the video or the audio that they have captured. Veritas says that in certain circumstances, they will release the raw video to the press or the public, but in most cases, by rule, they don't. Also, they want to protect the anonymity of their sources, but they will question and investigate that source before proceeding. They also, by rule, want to be accountable. If they make a mistake, they say they will admit it and correct it. Rule number 11 is that they do not put words in their subjects' mouths. Their purpose is to merely elicit the truth. Finally, they say, with great power comes great responsibility. So I give you all of these as background so you know who Project Veritas is and what their modus operandi is. I think it's only fair to provide that, because any subject of their investigations is going to be mortified and try to slander them in any way they can. One area of Veritas's website that I particularly like is called their Wall of Shame. It's where blue checkmark journalists' reputations go to die. It's where bad journalists have to retract bad reporting. As of this broadcast, I see 347 retractions that they have found. Here's a sample of one of the recent ones.
The American Independent, one of those things where it's like the George Orwell, peace is war is peace, ignorance is strength. They call the thing the opposite of what they actually do. DeSantis gives shout out to far-right activists as he signed bills to punish Twitter. They had to update the article. They had to retract one of the sentences in the article. Cue the Retracto theme song. Retracto, the correction alpaca. Retracto, he's coming at you. In this article by Oliver Willis, you may remember Oliver Willis from the Andrew Breitbart days with myself and Project Veritas. He's an employee of Media Matters, employed by David Brock. He was an employee at Media Matters. Now he works for this American Independent. He writes about the DeSantis appearance with me in Florida and Miami. DeSantis gives shout out to far-right activists. This is news to me, but Oliver Willis reports as fact, quote, during the 2020 election, while trying to assist Donald Trump, he's assigning motive to me there, who once paid O'Keefe for anti-Hillary Clinton videos. So Oliver Willis is effectively saying as fact that Donald Trump paid me for videos.
Boom, these explosions of bullshit.
And is factually incorrect. So we asked for a retraction. We are granted one. They delete this paragraph. They completely fixed it. But they did not delete the other things in this article.
Now, you can see that O'Keefe is a very lively, performative guy, and he clearly revels in his wins. But hey, I would too if I were him. When you can get over 300 retractions, you're clearly winning. O'Keefe went to Rutgers University, and he founded an independent newspaper there called The Centurion. In 2007, O'Keefe and Lila Rose recorded Planned Parenthood staffers who were ready to accept donations to abort only black children. And Rose, who pretended to be a pregnant 15-year-old, was going to be allowed to have an abortion without reporting statutory rape to police. O'Keefe came on the national scene in 2009 when he went into the offices of ACORN, a community organizing group that Barack Obama is famously associated with, where he recorded ACORN staffers explain to him how to lie on tax and welfare forms, bury cash, and traffic El Salvadoran females to become prostitutes. O'Keefe worked with his mentor, Andrew Breitbart, to expose ACORN, which then collapsed and eventually lost funding via the Senate, which Obama had to sign into law. This was a huge scandal, and I remember it well. You probably do as well. If you recall, Obama was once a community organizer, and ACORN had government contracts. Had O'Keefe not exposed ACORN in the way that he did, they might still be operating today. In subsequent years, O'Keefe exposed NPR and the group Enroll America, which led to the resignation of Obama's Secretary of Health and Human Services, Kathleen Sebelius. In 2016, Project Veritas released videos showing Democrats admitting not only that voter fraud exists, but how to commit it on a massive scale. New York City Democratic Election Commissioner Alan Shulkin admitted on camera that voter fraud was rampant in New York and allowed to flourish. Take a look.
I think there's a lot of voter fraud. Right. Like I say, people don't realize certain neighborhoods in particular, they bust people around to vote.
They do what?
They bust them around. They put them in a bus and they move the poll site to poll site.
Like what kind of neighborhoods?
Oh, I don't want to say.
Minority neighborhoods, like black neighborhoods and Hispanic neighborhoods.
And Chinese too.
Oh. Why do they do that? Just to get like more votes for Democrats or?
Almost themselves. They're all running for office.
Oh yeah, for like their candidates for when they're.
For the assembly, for whatever. They get buses and they move people around.
But New York doesn't have voter ID laws, right? New York?
No, you can't. You cannot ask.
They what?
They can't ask for voter ID.
Why is that? They can't?
The law. The law says you can't ask somebody. Which they really should be able to do. You know, I don't think it's too much to ask somebody to show some kind of an ID.
Yeah. I mean, why not? I mean, you have to show an ID for everything else.
Right, you go into a building, you got to show them your ID.
Well, you're the commissioner, you said, of the Democratic Election Commissioner. So if you think there's voter fraud and you think there should be voter ID, why don't people listen to you? I mean...
Well, that's because the New York State Legislature makes the laws. I don't make the laws.
And you're saying there's a lot of absentee ballot fraud, too.
Oh, there's thousands of absentee ballots. I don't know where they came from.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, Hillary Clinton doesn't support voter ID laws. Like,
I know. That's why I'm not always crazy about everything the Democrats do either. Blasio just gave out ID cards.
He what?
He gave out ID cards to Blasio. You don't have, that's in lieu of a driver's license, that you can use it for anything. Well, they didn't vet the people to see who they really are. Anybody could go in there and say, I'm Joe Smith, I want an ID card. It's absurd. You're going to see a lot of fraud. Not just voter fraud, all kinds of fraud.
Are you convinced now? I mean, this guy's admitting all kinds of fraud. But you were told that the 2020 election was the most fair and secure in history. Veritas has been hot on the trail of big tech, exposing their blatant bias and algorithmic suppression of conservative voices. Perhaps Veritas's most explosive release was the hot mic moment of ABC's Good Morning America anchor Amy Robach regarding suppression of Jeffrey Epstein stories. Check this out.
I've had the story for 3 years. I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air. First of all, I was told, who's Jeffrey Epstein? No one knows who that is. This is a stupid story. Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways. We were so afraid we wouldn't be able to interview Kate and Will that also quashed the story. And then Alan Dershowitz was also implicated in it because of the planes. She told me everything. She had pictures. She had everything. She was in hiding for 12 years. We convinced her to come out. We convinced her to talk to us. It was unbelievable what we had. Clinton. We had everything. I tried for 3 years to get it on, to no avail, and now it's all coming out, and it's like these new revelations, and I freaking had all of it. I'm so pissed right now. Like, every day I get more and more pissed because I'm just like, oh my God, what we had was unreal. Other women backing it up. Hey, yep. Brad Edwards, the attorney, 3 years ago, saying there will come a day when we will realize Jeffrey Epstein was the most prolific pedophile this country has ever known. And I had it all 3 years ago.
Can you believe this? ABC suppressed Amy Robach's exposure of Jeffrey Epstein. Think of all the girls that could have saved. The only saving grace to this story is that the insider who leaked this to Veritas is still working at ABC. No one knows who did it, and that's tremendous. Veritas has exposed widespread voter fraud, so for those that say it doesn't exist, well, the videos don't lie. Many know that Veritas has exposed CNN for explicit bias, such as covering up the Hunter Biden corruption story. This is just a brief history of Project Veritas's work, but it's significant, is it not? Were it not for O'Keefe and his insiders, we might not ever know about this rampant corruption. And in an era of fake news, we have to have watchdogs on the watchdogs. This all leads me to what was called the Project Veritas Experience, which is a sort of performance art that O'Keefe created to tell his story through art. O'Keefe is a showman, and this is a new performative way of telling his story, from Rutgers student to guerrilla investigative journalist. One thing that I have learned in interviewing James is that he's fearless, and I think you have to be. I've interviewed some of his whistleblowers from Google and toy company Hasbro and others. O'Keefe employed the help of choreography, dance, and video visuals to tell his story. And I'll tell you why I think that's innovative. For far too long, conservative causes, and I'll just use them as an example, have been highly uncreative and unartistic. The Republican Party as a whole is not a creative bunch. I know this because I've seen it from the inside. Democrats have a hold on the entertainment industry. They can pull whomever they want because at some juncture, everyone in Hollywood just decided they'd be in a leftist club. and just ostracize anyone that didn't think like them. They punished non-liberals by silencing them, bullying them, and eventually threatening their careers. Seeing the example of Gina Carano, use her as an example. So the left in Hollywood have been happy bedfellows, but the conservatives never really decided to have a counter to this. If they did, it was in aging singers who seemed out of touch. I never saw an effort to modernize or dial into youth. It was all logistics and polling and suits and donor parties. Honestly, it was a club too. It's not the fun kind. They failed to realize that they could shape culture by employing artists that might be on their side. When Donald Trump came along, things changed. He was a natural entertainer. He was P.T. Barnum. He could entertain a crowd for hours. He needed no help. But in this entertainer quality, he also had a lot of pomp and circumstance and braggadocio. But at least he had panache. Conservatives said, hey, we can win the meme war. We can create funny stuff like the satire site The Babylon Bee, which came along and replaced The Onion as a hilarious commentary on current events and politics. Rappers began to emerge that supported the movement, like Bryson Gray. Everything started to look a lot more diverse and interesting. It was young people, black people, white, Hispanic, Asian. It became okay to be conservative again. And here comes James O'Keefe with this sting investigative journalism with a lot of flair. O'Keefe even appeared as Curly in a production of Oklahoma. And admittedly, I have appreciation for that because I come from the musical theater world. See, the Republican National Committee didn't get it. They are full of yes men and women who just do the same strategy every day. I mean, that's DC for you. Stale ladder climbers. But Trump threw a huge monkey wrench into all of this. It was like, hey, party isn't as important as principle and policy. Trump had to kick a lot of rhinos out of his cabinet. It was a learning process. You have to understand that DC is all about the maintaining of power. And almost every politician there is compromised or bought in some way. I hold the RNC just as accountable as I do the DNC. But 2016 changed a lot of things. And like I said, I didn't see any embrace of art as a whole. In fact, when the President's Committee on the Fine Arts disbanded in protest after Trump was elected, I wondered why they didn't create a new commission with innovative artists of all walks who could champion free speech. Not Neil Young, of course, but they're out there. I asked them about this. I went to the White House and met with their team. It's like I was speaking Swahili to them. Even though Trump was the P.T. Barnum of presidents, none of his staff got it. They were all yes men. They didn't want to take on a risk. And that was unfortunate because I really think they left a lot on the field. The annual lighting of the White House Christmas tree became kind of a joke. It just wasn't well produced. Frank Sinatra sang for both Nixon and Reagan when the Italian Prime Minister was hosted for a state dinner. He sang a song called The House I Live In, which combated the anti-Semitism of that time and also inspired patriotism and unity. I actually recorded my own modernized version of that song and pitched it to the State Department at that time as a measure of musical diplomacy and unity, but to no avail. So you can see why I would lament the lack of artistic engagement and appreciation. So when I see Project Veritas create something artistic to tell its story, I'm immediately engaged. I think, wow, they get it. They know they can employ art. And mind you, Veritas is not a partisan group. They expose all corruption, including on the right, as they should. Music is something that unites us all, and the reason in many ways is because music employs patterns that we all identify with. It's a mutually shared experience. As I've explained in past episodes, though, even music is being politicized and being used as a weapon. Neil Young doesn't want to rock in the free world. He just wants to rock in the mandated vaccine world. He doesn't believe in free speech. So artists right now actually have an opportunity to use their art to express themselves, not necessarily in a partisan way, but in a First Amendment way. Like, sing for the truckers in Canada. Sing for Novak Djokovic's right to play tennis. If you can create Woodstock from Vietnam, surely artists can use their art to promote expression and freedom. Project Veritas is doing two things simultaneously. They're firstly doing what journalists should do, which is expose the truth, even if it goes against the prevailing narrative. That's their duty. But secondly, they are finding an artistic way to spread their message. Journalism doesn't have to be bland and boring. It can be spicy. Look at my Epoch Times colleague, Roman Balmakov. He has a very spicy show, and all of us do it in our own creative ways. I use the gift of music and sometimes parody to accomplish this. I try to use my artistic gifts as much as I can to tell the story. And I think more of us out there are trying to do this. So I salute James O'Keefe and his team for doing something outside the box. We need more of that. Remember that Shakespeare said, "The play's the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king." He was referring to his play King Lear, where he knew that he could engage the king through his writing. If we don't use art to amplify our goals, what are we doing? And like I said, the conservative movement has a long way to go, but they are making baby steps, and it took Trump to do that. You look at the personalities that are out there, and you do have some dynamic individuals. Ron DeSantis, Tim Scott, Dan Crenshaw, Nikki Haley, Rick Grinnell. I mean, look, the door is wide open. But art always has to find its place. It can never be overlooked. And if James O'Keefe has the foresight to realize that performance can be intertwined with narrative and truth-telling, hey, we should be paying attention. We crave art. It has a special place in our culture and our society. And we have artists like Neil Young trying to shut down real conversation. That's not artistic at all. So we have to make sure artists are stepping up to the plate and saying, no, that's not cool. Now, is everyone afraid? Well, I can tell you that many conservative-leaning artists are afraid to take a stand because the left has threatened their careers. And we all know how non-liberal and intolerant that actually is. But you either push back against the culture or you accept it in defeat. I want to see Leonardo DiCaprio and Clint Eastwood be on a talk show saying, hey, we butt heads on politics, but we share a beer and make a great film together. When's the last time you saw that happen? They never do that because to do that means equality. And yes, we hear that word so often, or even equity. But what about equality of opinion? The idea that all perspectives matter and that we can't just keep canceling each other to eradicate a viewpoint or a group. If we had equality, you would see a balanced panel on The View, but you don't. They don't even have a conservative voice to speak of on that show anymore. And they only suspended Whoopi for 2 weeks rather than fired her. Even Bill Maher has come under fire from liberals, but he said, look, the left has given me a lot to go after. I didn't leave them, they left me. If you want to know what it looks like when liberals become socialists and conservatives become liberals, look at Canada right now. Trudeau has that country so messed up, it's laughable. But the conservative and opposition leader, Erin O'Toole, might be removed by secret vote because he's not standing up with a spine in the way that a leader should. The conservatives of Canada are like Democrat Michelob Ultra in America. Only 100 calories and an iffy taste. 3 of the most tasteless things to come out of Canada are Justin Trudeau, Molson Beer, and Neil Young. And let's be honest, Neil Young is doing one of the most creatively stifling, unartistic things a musician can do. He's not fighting for higher songwriter wages or tour venue limitations. He's fighting to restrict discussion. And that's insidious. Meanwhile, Project Veritas is putting on performance art. Turning Point USA is having Dustin Lynch and Brantley Gilbert perform. Kid Rock is releasing a song called We the People. Jordan Peterson is holding sold-out psychology lectures. See, there is art to be found, but it has to be embraced and celebrated. Art is not synonymous with leftism. Leftism just embraced it, coddled it, and utilized it. It even pandered to it. You know how you have to kind of clap for a kid when he or she puts on a little show, as primitive as it might be? We've got to do that. We have to clap for those who are making art. We have to encourage it. The future of culture isn't telling you what to do or think. It's allowing you the playground to explore. Music and art are truth. Project Veritas' name has the Latin word for truth in it. It's unearthing the lies we are being told, whether that's in the media, in a politician's office, or in the pharmaceutical industry. James O'Keefe finds people who are just trying to do their jobs, but then they notice something errant, and they say to themselves, gosh, this ain't right. I need to do something. And fortunately, they can go to James O'Keefe, who can then expose it. Not out of malice, but out of the pursuit of truth and transparency. They wouldn't have to expose CNN if CNN weren't corrupt, but it is. O'Keefe has a brand new book out called American Muckraker, and this Project Veritas Experience coincides with that book launch. It's certainly a unique way to do it, but there is no other investigative entity out there that does what Veritas does. And they provide some irrefutable evidence of fake news and corruption, things that the powerful people don't want you to know about. It's taking on the media establishment, one that continues to be dishonest and non-transparent. How do you root that out? Well, in Veritas's case, you have to go undercover. You have to find whistleblowers. You have to be courageous and inspire more to be courageous. That's how you win battles. I think we can all learn something from Project Veritas and its ever-expanding impact. This is now an experience, and one that engages scores of young people who are eager to get involved. This is not some old group of bookworms with a pad and a pen. This is a dynamic group of people just demanding honesty. Check them out. I'm Beau, and that's the show.